Hello. Our topic is Jupiter, the 11th harmonic, and extraversion. I'm going to share with you some research that I did that strongly suggests that Jupiter in 11th harmonic aspects, I'll explain in a minute what 11th harmonic aspects means, to particular planets and harmonics based on 11 is related to extraversion. Now that may sound unbelievable, even if you're an astrologer, that these minor aspects could be related to extraversion, but that's what the research shows. So I'm going to share with you the results of the research and also how I did the research. But first, I have some questions for you. There are other things, obviously, than what's generally called a minor aspect, like the 11th harmonic, that would be related to extraversion. For example, do planets below the horizon make a person more introverted? That's probably a more common idea. Are fire and air signs more extroverted than earth and water signs? Is Sagittarius especially extroverted? Is Scorpio especially introverted? So these are, ideas we have in astrology. Are they true? And is there a way to test these ideas? Can we find out if they're accurate? Well, the way we usually find out is we look at our own chart, we look at charts of friends and family, famous people, we see if it seems to work. Is there a more rigorous way to test these ideas? Well, there are more rigorous ways, and this research, is more rigorous, more solid, you might say, more detailed approach to figuring this out. Okay, what was the research? Well, here's what I did. I have the charts of 940 people who took a psychological test. It's called the EPI test. Fairly common test in psychology, a personality test. And one of the things it measures is how introverted or extroverted you are. So I came up with this idea of Sun and Jupiter and Mars and Jupiter in these 11 based harmonics. I'll explain that in a moment. To see if people who have higher extroversion scores have these aspects in their chart. And they do. The correlation is only 0.12. That's not an extremely high correlation. But the probability of getting that correlation is less than 1 in 1,000. So, bottom line is this. I came up with an idea of what would make somebody extroverted. I tested it against these personality scores, and it's statistically significant at what we call the 0.001 level. So, more specifically, what is it that I tested? I checked to see if Sun and Jupiter were in harmonics 11. What does it mean to be in a harmonic 11? It means that Sun and Jupiter are 1/11th of a circle, whatever number of degrees that is, or 2/11ths, or 3/11ths. The idea is that all these aspects would have similar meaning. Now, it gets more bizarre, you might say, if you're not into harmonic astrology. We did the 22nd harmonic. This would mean 1/22nd of a circle, 2 22nds, 3 22nds, or 44th harmonic, 11 times 4, 11 times 8, 88th harmonic, 11 times 16, and 11 times 11. So if Sun and Jupiter are in any of those fractions of a circle, there's many, many fractions, dozens or hundreds of them, 188th, 288th, 388th, 121st, 11 times 220, any of those distances, and they have very small orbs, otherwise everybody would have one of those aspects, you get the same weight. We weighted them all the same. You get the same number of points to keep the formula simple. So whether it's 1/11th or 1/22nd, you get a certain number of points, and the closer the aspect is to being exact relative to the orb, the more points you get. So if you have an exact, it's crazy. We're saying if you have an exact 121st of a circle, which is, I guess, what would that be, a little less than 3 degrees, and you have an orb of a few minutes, you're considered to be extroverted. So this is very wild idea compared to what we usually do in astrology. But I use these ideas. One of the approaches to astrology I use is this advanced harmonic analysis. I call it vibrational astrology, based on vibrations. Very different idea from what is usually used. And then I also checked Mars and Jupiter. That also worked. And you get this incredible correlation. Is this just, a random thing that I hit this 1 out of 1,000 probability? It's just the probability of getting the result? Maybe. but that probability would be less than 1 in 1,000. And if you only do Sun and Jupiter, the correlation value is 0.09, a little bit less than the 0.12, and the probability is 1 out of 100. Now, technically speaking, that probability is not less than 1 out of 1,000 because I also looked at other things. Those aren't the only two things I looked at. And there's this thing called the Bonferroni correction. It's a technical thing in statistics that the more things you look at, you really should take that into account. So this is really more of an exploratory kind of research. These were the first two things I looked at recently, just in the past week. I had looked at this data 4 years ago, back in 2010, and I'll share those results. So, to be really even more rigorous about it, we need to test this against new data. Okay, so why did I decide to look at Jupiter and the 11th harmonic? What motivated me to do that? Well, the Jupiter part's probably more obvious. Jupiter's expansive, therefore, it's reasonable to expect it would incline towards extroversion. Now, the 11th harmonic, I believe, is restless. It's dynamic. It's on the move. It's moving. It's not extroverted. It's just anxious to get somewhere, to keep moving. I figured maybe extroverts, 11th harmonic is a little inclined to be more extroverted. The problem here is that the astrological language is not identical to the psychological language, but I figured it might still work. Maybe a symptom of say, Sun and Jupiter in 11th harmonic might be to be a little more extroverted. So I checked to see if it was true, and it is. Then I checked Mars and Jupiter. It is also true. Then, as I mentioned, I tried other aspects, harmonic aspects, these minor aspects with different planets. And, sometimes it looked good, sometimes not so good. It was the first two I looked at that were the best. So, how strong of an indication is this research that Sun and Jupiter in these 11-based harmonics leads to extroversion? Well, it's not a rock-solid validation of astrology, but from the point of view of modern research methodology, it is a lot more impressive than looking at the charts of your friends and family and famous people. Much more impressive, because that's what we call cherry picking. You're just picking out a few charts. It's very prone to you making sense out of it. Here we've got hard numbers. We are using all the data that's collected, and just as important as whether we validate a specific idea is we get to explore the data. You explore the data and see what possibilities there are, what things might hold up. So it's exciting for that reason. We're paving the way to seeing if we could actually see a measurable effect in astrology. And I also tested zodiac signs and whether planets are above and below the horizon to see if it looks solid. So this kind of research can really be fun. Now let me tell you a little background to the research. Excuse me. This data was originally collected by David Fink. He's a professor of psychology, and he gave the EPI test to students, to over 940 students. There's in the EPI test there's a lie detector thing where if people answer in a crazy way to certain questions, it looks like they're just not answering honestly. Some got removed for that reason. One was later found to be not a realistic date. I think it was the day of the month was not between 1 and how many days in that month. So that was eliminated. That was found later on. So these are 940 of the data that looked good according to the standards of the EPI test. From all those he collected over many years. He doesn't teach 940 students every year. So he collected these over many years. And he was especially interested to see if, for example, Saturn would show up in a Glaucon sector. So we tested that, and there was a slight indication that the Glaucon sectors work. The effect size, as we call it, was very small, so it's a little bit unclear. But it was in the right direction. I am interested in harmonics, so I checked to see if Sun and Saturn in 7-based harmonics would incline to introversion. And it did, but also very mildly. The effect size was also fairly small. So these two things didn't give us crystal clear results, but they were in the direction expected. And recently, just in the past week, a colleague is doing some research on introversion, extroversion, and it made me think of this data. And it just popped into my head. Instead of predicting introversion with the Sun and Saturn in 7th harmonic, I thought, what if Jupiter in the 11th harmonic led to extroversion? I tested it and got even better results, much stronger results than I did in the test of Sun and Saturn in 7th harmonic that I did back in 2010. Okay, so the research that we did in 2010 is posted on a website. If you go to this website, astrosoftware.com, and then up at the top, we're going to be redoing this website. It's a little bit old and clunky looking, but up here at the top, you can click on Information in this menu bar. And then on the left side, you can click on Articles. And then you'll see a long list of articles. And number 26 and 27 are the two articles. Number 26 is the first paper that Dr. Fink and I wrote called Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, Effects on Extroversion, Introversion. This was supervised by a professor of sociology who is very active. Here's the acknowledgement to the professor in the sociology department at the University of Florida, and a professor in the Department of Education at the University of Florida who supervised in the writing of the paper, helping to make sure that it meets standards of scientific papers. And there's the paper with the results. And I've given you the basic idea. There's more to the results. We tested other things. You can read the paper for more information. And here's the follow-up paper, number 27 in this list, where I checked out the 7th harmonic. So this was done in 2010. Now, today, this is June 2014. Go back to my PowerPoint presentation. I tested another idea, this 11-based harmonic, and it works even better than the Algonquin sector thing we looked at and the 7th harmonic. So very exciting, very interesting. Now I'm going to tell you how I did the research. I told you the results of the research, the background to the research. Now let me tell you how the research is conducted in case you want to do the research yourself or similar kinds of research. What I did is I used the Sirius 1.3 software, and I'll show you how I did it. Here in the Sirius 1.3, this is the chart of one of the students, one of the 940 students. Their names begin with underscore, ID, some number, and then a code which relates to the course that they were taking. The F, I think, means fall. 86, I believe, was 1986. So we're not using their names to protect their privacy. And there's the birth data. This person was born February 28th, 1961 at 5:05 a.m. And there's his birth chart, his or her birth chart. Maybe F means female. I don't remember. Anyway, so there's the chart. Is this person introverted or extroverted? Well, we have the score from the psychology test, from the psychological personality test. And can the astrology correlate, predict, you might say, what the extroversion score would be? Well, using this idea of the 11-based harmonics to Jupiter, it does. It does predict it. With this data set, what we really want to do is get more data and see if we can replicate the results. I would love to get more data and see, because if we can replicate the results with new data, then we've really made a huge, incredible breakthrough. But even with just this data, this is very intriguing, very exciting possibility. Okay, and I also looked at zodiac signs, angles from the ascendant to see if planets are above and below the horizon. Interestingly, I've got a typo here. It wasn't 6th house, it was 12th house. As far as planets above and below the horizon, there was a tendency for all the planets except Neptune and the Moon to be in the 12th house. And 12th house, even though it's above the horizon, is considered to be secretive and hidden. So that's interesting. We could see if that replicates with new data. So some of the results using particularly the houses were interesting. Not exactly what we would predict, but similar to some astrological ideas. And that's the value of the research. Helps you refine and develop your ideas and then ultimately see if you can validate them. Okay, so let me show you how I explored it. I went into this research feature here, Astro Search, and there are whole kinds of research features. And I used one that's not the most obvious thing in the world with all these lists. It's down here, Advanced Research Feature, Quantitative Transit and Natal Synodic Cycles. And when you click on this, you have two options. And the second one is line graph of scores. The scores means you have scores for people. In this case, we have a score for their how extroverted or introverted they are, by natal angular distance. This is a nice thing to explore if certain aspects correlate with a value. So I click on this, it opens up a menu, opens up a window of things I can do. There's a help here. I click on the help button, and this tells me that if I select the astro signature Need for Solitude Quiet Retreat, which is the default, there are test scores for 941. Well, later we removed one because the birth data didn't make sense, and it became 940. There are test scores, and you can select a pair of planets and see if it correlates with the scores. Let me show you how it works. And then there's some more information in this little help window. I'll close this. I'll click on test scores, and these are the test scores. These are the students who took it, and this is their extraversion score. So this data is included with Sirius. If you own the Sirius software, you have the data, and you can research it. We include it with the program. So, for example, this particular student here got a score of 5. This student also got 5, means they're introverted. This one got a score of 18. You can see that that's the highest score here, more extroverted. So there they are, the 940. I see one that's a value of 20. So the idea is we're going to see if some angular distance between two planets correlates with these scores. Let me show you. This is very cool. I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm back to here, and let's do an example. Let's take angle 0 to 80, the way we 0 to 180, the way we usually measure the shortest distance between two planets, and we've got Sun and Jupiter. Now let me show you this degrees per point. You'll see what this means when I show you the results. I'm going to select 10. I've got zodiac longitude. Let me just display the graph, and all this will start to make sense. It may take some time to display. I say yes. It actually didn't take that much time. Let me show you what this graph is telling us. It's telling us, because I did 10 degrees per point, that from 0 to 9, the average extraversion score is about 13.25. I got 13, 13.25, 13.5, 13.75, 14. If I scroll to the bottom, this is the details for each score. So here's the details. If I go to the bottom, it tells me that the mean score, average score, is 13.27. It's perfectly average. So it's saying that for people who have Sun and Jupiter within 10 degrees, why within 10 degrees? Because I told it to do 10 degrees multiple, they have an average extraversion. But between 10 and 20 degrees, from 10 to 19, rounding down, it's actually 10 degrees to 19 degrees, 59 minutes. We'll just call it 10 to 20 degrees, very high, the highest score. And those who have Sun-Jupiter opposition, well, that's interesting, are introverted. If you're between 170 and 180 degrees, you are the most introverted. So that is kind of interesting. Maybe Sun-Jupiter oppositions incline you to be introverted for some reason. Wouldn't intuitively make sense to me, but it's possible. Or maybe it's just a random fluctuation, and it just happens to be how they spread out. But you can look at it and see if you can make any sense out of it. See if you have any interesting results. Let's look at, and we could do it 0 to 360. And we might want to do, this would be Jupiter past the Sun. Let's call this Jupiter, and let's call this Sun, because the Sun's faster than Jupiter. So this would be how far the Sun is past Jupiter, display the graph. And this goes from 0 to 360, because this would be what we call a waxing square, this would be a waning square. So you can explore the data, and this is what we do in modern research methods. We like to explore the data, see what's going on. You could do 5-degree multiples. I mean, you display the graph. So visualization of data and exploring it to see what's going on is a major research method these days, rather than jumping into what we call a hypothesis test. And this allows you to explore things. So what did I want to explore? I'm interested in harmonic astrology, among other things, and I wanted to look at, let me just put this in the, doesn't matter whether I call it Jupiter Sun or Sun Jupiter, if I'm doing 0 to 180 or harmonic, but I'm going to look at the 11th harmonic for Sun Jupiter, display the graph, and by the way, here are the details. It tells me what the average score is for that range. Oh, I'm at 5-degree multiples. Let me go back. Let me do it 15 degrees. I'll explain why in a minute. 15 degrees, display the graph. Because this would mean, this first score would mean, it does mean that Sun, Jupiter are in 11th harmonic within a 15, 0 to 14 degrees, means that basically that they're conjunct in the 11th harmonic chart, whether it's a 1/11 or 2/11, they're within 15 degrees in that harmonic chart. They're in that harmonic with an orb that's typically used in harmonics. You need to have some understanding of harmonics to appreciate this. And here it's telling me that value is actually 13.08. It tells me the minimum was 2. There was somebody highly introverted. The maximum was 22. Somebody highly extroverted. And there's 78. Well, that's a lot of data for statistical purposes. So we have 980 charts. We have 78 people. And if I scroll to the bottom, it tells me the average is 13.26. And this is 13.08. Very close to being average. Technically slightly under average score. So I can see what's going on. So my theory doesn't work for Sun, Jupiter, 11. Let me try 22. Working would mean that the average score, average extraversion score would be very high. And then I can also look at what the range is. The minimum, maximum would be the range if I'm curious about that. Display the graph. Oh, now this one works. Sun and Jupiter are in 22nd. It's the highest score. And it's almost like a line going down. Very interesting. So that does seem to work. I can try 44th harmonic. And this is what I did. I explored the data. 44th harmonic didn't seem to work too well. So at first I wasn't that excited. I decided, let me look at Mars, Jupiter in 11th harmonic. You're just exploring possibilities. Display the graph. Oh, now it's catching my attention. If you remember right, 22nd harmonic Sun Jupiter was very high, and now the Mars Jupiter is very high. So this is ways of seeing what's going on. Then I looked at 22nd, and it takes time to do real research to explore what might be going on. Again, extremely high. Now I think maybe my 11 harmonic idea works, but I have to use multiples of 11, and I should include Mars Jupiter as well. And I can go on and on and on. I tried Sun Saturn in 7th harmonic to see if it scored low here. Now most people don't use harmonics, but you could explore different angular distances. And you can actually explore signs. It doesn't look like it because it's 2 planets. How would I do signs? I'll show you. I'll select the Sun. This is not obvious. And down here, if you scroll to the bottom, it says none. So I'm only doing the Sun. That would mean Sun to 0 Aries, where the Sun is in the zodiac. And here's a little trick. I do 30 degrees. What does Sun 0 to 30 mean? If Sun is between 0 and 30 in zodiac longitude, that's Aries. So you might say tricked, or it's not obvious. Like, it'd be more obvious if it said signs, planet and sign, But there is a way to do it. I can display the graph, and this is how extroverted each of the zodiac signs are. Here's Aries, 0. Oh, I need to change this to 0 to 360. See, it only went 150 to 180. Display graph. Okay, now I've got my 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90, 90 to 120, etc., all the way up to 330 to 360. So this is Aries, and it's about average, a little more than 13. My average score is 13.26. So Aries, of the 70 people, I have the details down here, of the 70 people with Sun in Aries, their extroversion score is average. Taurus is more extroverted. Gemini is very extroverted. Cancer, very introverted. So you can look at these results, visual results. Let's see, this is Pisces going backwards. Well, let me start from the beginning. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer low, Leo, Virgo extroverted, Libra introverted, Scorpio extroverted. Well, that doesn't really fit. And Sagittarius is the most introverted. So the signs, in terms of what I might expect, are probably most astrologers. Let me try Mars. They don't seem to work too well. Display the graph. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Mars and Gemini introverted, Cancer, Leo, 120 to 159. Virgo is extroverted. Anyway, I'm not getting results that I can make a lot of sense out of, not getting consistent results. So what this is showing is the average extroversion score. Here's more details of the range and how many people have planets in those signs to explore what's going on. And there's also a way to, you might say, trick or make selections here to see if planets are above and below the horizon. And it's not obvious, but what I could do is I could select ascendant here and Sun. Excuse me, a little stuffy here. And angle 0 to 360. What is this telling me? Let me set this to, 30 degrees is good. So what is this telling me? It's going to tell me if the Sun is 0 to 30 past the ascendant. When the Sun is 0 to 30 past the ascendant, where is it? It would be, looking at my chart wheel in the background, it would, for this person, would be between 6 Aquarius and 6 Pisces. It would be in this range. With equal houses, that would be the first house. So the if we're getting down to 60 to 90 or 90 to 120, that's at the bottom of the chart relative to the horizon. So this would give me a good insight into how the Sun is related to the ascendant. The nice thing is you can pull it up very quickly and explore the data. So when the Sun is just below the horizon in the equal houses, that would be like the first house, and then second house, person is very extroverted. Well, that's curious. Is this just random fluctuation? It's not what I would expect, but in any case, it's not verifying my suspicion that the first one would be low and the later ones would be higher. Okay, so this is. Let's try Jupiter, since Jupiter is associated. We're figuring is associated with extroversion. Select. Oh no, not there. Going crazy, not doing this right. Ascendant. I want Jupiter. Jupiter past the ascendant. Aquarius, Pisces, Jupiter past the ascendant. Just making sure I'm doing this right, thinking about it. Display the graph. And what we get is when Jupiter is below the ascendant here, it's pretty low actually. When it gets above the ascendant, it gets higher. So not really making a lot of sense in terms of what I might expect. Oh no, it does make sense. Hold on. You have to think about this. This makes perfect sense. This is below the horizon. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth house, and for some reason continues to the seventh. The scores are low. When I hit the eighth house, it's very high and stays high for 9, 10, 11, and then 12, coming back down. So this actually fits. When Jupiter's above the horizon, the extroversion scores are higher. Interesting. So So maybe above and below the horizon also works. I can display the graph for Saturn. Well, not as clear. Saturn seems to just go up and down, looks almost random. So Jupiter seems to fit. So are these just random fluctuations, or are we actually seeing something? That's for you to decide, and then we could try it on a new data set and see if it works with the new data. I could have actually taken this data and split it into pieces, and then I could have tested it on half and confirmed it on the other half. But I didn't do that. I just ran all of it. But anyway, I was more interested in the harmonics, and that's what I looked at. You know, other researchers could go in with other ideas. What we really need to do is get some additional data and see. Now, let me show you the last phase of the research. After playing around with this, I decided that Sun and Jupiter in 11-based harmonics, meaning 11, 22, 44, and Mars and Jupiter might be associated, might correlate with extraversion. So what I did is I exit out of this and use another research feature. I use the astrosignature feature. So I go in here to astrosignature, and I put in the values. So here's my Sun, Jupiter, Mars, Jupiter. This is the main one I did. I can click on the Customize and view it. And this is the astrosignature, where for Sun, Jupiter, and harmonics 11, 22, 44, 88, 176, that's the 11 times 16, and 121. And then the same thing repeated for Mars, Jupiter. And I gave the same number of points. I gave 50 points. It doesn't matter if I gave it 50 points or 10 points or 1 point. It would matter if I varied the strength. And I gave it a large number in case I later wanted to play around with giving more points to certain harmonics. So if I thought 11 is more important than 88 or, 176, I could lower this. I didn't bother with that. I just kept it simple. I gave them all the same strength. And this is, when I run this, I get the 0.12 correlation with my results. I'm going to cancel out of this because I don't want to change anything. And one other thing you do, you create an astrosignature, and then here with this little correlation button, you can type in the names of those charts. They begin with underscore and add them to this list. And I added all of them here, so all 940 are here. And I check this box to tell it to do the correlation. And now it's going, when I do the analysis, let me cancel out of this. When I click on begin analysis, excuse me, I'm so stuffy, sorry about that. What it's going to do is it's going to do a correlation of my scores with the extraversion scores for those people. It's just fantastic that you can actually record scores, any kind of score. In this case, it's an extraversion score. You can record scores for a person, create a formula to predict those scores, an astrological set of variables that would match the scores, and see if it works. And using this harmonic idea of 11-based harmonics, it worked. So if we can replicate this with other data, it would be even more powerful. But even without the replication, still very, very impressive. And you could play with this formula yourself. You could add in the Jupiter above the horizon or whatever you want to do. But keep in mind that if you tailor your formula very, very specifically to this data, it's less likely to replicate with new data. And that's why I kept the formula simple. You might say, well, no, it's not simple. You have all those harmonics. But it's simple in the sense that they're all 11-based harmonics. I didn't start mixing up other kinds of harmonics. I didn't give different weights. I kept it relatively simple. And there's the result. Correlation 12%. And it tells me the score of each person. And at the bottom, it tells me that there are 940 charts that have the data, and there's the statistically significant at the 0.001 level. And up here, there's even more information. Let me drag this into the part of the screen I'm capturing, where Sirius also shows the details for each person, in case you wanted to look at the specifics. What is it they have? Like this person has Sun and Jupiter in the 88th harmonic with this orb. They get this many points out of the possible 50 points. the orb is relatively small, so they got a lot of points, and the total. So it figures out all that, totals it all up, and tells you the significance level. Very, very powerful research features for understanding, exploring, and also you can go on and try to validate it. So that's it. I'm at 35 minutes here. This is a relatively long video. Let me see if I have anything else in my PowerPoint presentation I forgot to mention. I covered all this. No, that's it. That's my presentation. And, well, I mentioned here in the last slide, it appears from this research that very high harmonics are important. So what I did, the way I kept adding more and more harmonics, is in the astrosignature I tried adding the 88th, the 176th, and then the 11 times 11, which according to the latest research I've done, doubling the harmonic is very powerful. And I tested individual aspects. So I spent hours playing with this astrosignature feature after playing with that first feature I showed you to explore angular distances, and I found that there appeared to be a very simple thing. Any Sun, Jupiter, Mars, Jupiter harmonic based on 11 inclines to extraversion. It's very exciting, helps us develop the astrological theory. Next step would be to get more data and see if we can replicate it. Okay, so there it is, my friends. Sounds unbelievable that these subtle vibrations, these seemingly very, very minor aspects, might actually have tangible effects, but very strong suggestion that it does. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. God bless. Namaste.